Well, hello, and today my pleasure centres literally overflow with glee, where Banggood have sent to me to review a Kopis 1 quadcopter. Heard a lot about them as being seriously quick out of the box. So let's get it out of the box and see how quick it is. And the immediate thing I noticed, and spoiler alert, I took this out of the box before to check it, is it comes in its own special case. Isn't that great? I feel we should have some music, like the Halo music. Oh, look at that. I like this as well, it's actually secured in the box with its own strap, so it can't fall out, which is quite clever. But let's actually get it out and have a look. So here it is, and I've never quite seen a quad like this quite so ready to fly out of the box, because it's literally, it came with the props on. It's got apparently a FreeSky XSR receiver. When I looked at it, I thought it might be an XM Plus. You notice as well it's got the antennas for this coming forwards, which is an interesting thing. But if you fly it up like that, of course the antennas are at the right angle. These motors, they feel quite small actually. These are T-Motors TF40s, 2450 kV. The ESCs on the arms, interesting again because they're 30 amp BL Heli 32 ESCs, which means this thing should be able to run D-Shot 1200, because we're all thinking D-Shot 600, that's a bit slow, isn't it? One thing I also noticed is it's really light. I mean, obviously it hasn't got the battery and everything, but it just doesn't seem to weigh anything. I'll have to actually get it on some scales just to have a comparison between what you'd call the normal quad and this one. This carbon feels really nice. It's a 3K weave, and it's also got rounded edges, so there's no sharp bits here, which is nicely done. It's actually a kind of a almost curves, two curves joined together, rather than like it's not so much a stretch X as a stretch 2U's put together. Interesting, really interesting. Looks fantastic. Another thing of note in there is the Kakute flight controller, which I think is the one where I'm just trying to look. The gyro is kind of soft mounted on the board itself to sort of stop vibrations. Yeah, this is the Runcam Swift Mini with a 2.3 lens. Great spec once again. I suppose one of the slight issues I might have is this antenna. If you're going around quite flat, it looks like the null point's right at you, and you can't really bend it up, else it'll hit these guys. Oh well, we'll see how that flies. This feels wonderful in your hands. It's so light. I think I can't really get over how light that is. A thing of beauty. Let's hope it flies well. 50-48 props, and what else you get in the bag? Spare set of props. So a couple of bits from HollyBro, spare parts or other quads. Got a battery strap. You've got the OSD cable for the Swift Mini, and in here you've got a GoPro. I assume it's a session mount, it might just be a regular mount that will sit on here. But yeah, I mean, this is so ready to fly, we should just be able to bind it and go. So let's check it out. Oh man, it's even got, just notice this, apart from the fact it's got a battery protector on the back, it's got a nice silicone pad here, so when you put the battery on it stops it slipping. That's really nice, nice touch. Really looking forward to this. Better plug it into Betaflight, see what's going on, get it bound and stuff. Let's get on with it.
Just wanted to have a quick look in Betaflight because it's really more normal than I would have expected. So as far as the port side goes, you've got the UART set up for the IRC Tramp, which is compatible with the VTX this is using. We've also got, of course, Serial X set up for S-Bus, and we got some smart port telemetry enabled. Configuration wise, which is where it shot me a bit, we've got D-Shot 600 set up, so nothing fancy there. And we did have, by default, this is all default, and it's Betaflight 320. Motor stop was not set, and we had air mode set constantly. I like it my way. But again, we just had an 8K gyro with a 2K PID loop here, so it's, nothing special going on here. PID tuning wise, quite interesting, because there's obviously been some work done and some really, this is slightly different from the norm. We've got an RC rate here of 1.55 with a super rate of 0.7, which is different than I would have. I set myself up a profile 2 in the sort of normal RC rate of 1 with a super rate of 0.8. So we'll have to look at that one, see how it flies basically. As far as the receiver went, because we're using a FreeSky XRS, it's got telemetry. So what I'm doing, I'm setting aux3 to the RSSI channel, and I send that back through my Taranis to the Kopis, and then it then picks up as something it can display the RSSI in the OSD. If you don't know how to do that, I've got a blog post about that one. Modes wise, it was set up just to arm, and I think I had angle. I just did my normal I just did my normal with arm, air mode. I have angle as my backup and beeper. So the default is acro. I prefer to turn air mode on and off just for landing and take it off. I know if I'm in long grass or not. As far as OSD goes, it was set up to default. I messed about with it a bit. Now, one thing that was interesting about the Kopis is that it has an inbuilt current sensor, so I decided to put in my current draw. It's not something I use. I was just kind of interested to see how many amps I would be pulling and whether it was accurate or not. I suppose something else that might be useful, which I might consider, is the MAH drawn, and see how accurate that is in terms of what it thinks I've used and how much I've put back in the battery. But generally speaking, you know, all I need to know is my voltage and my flight time most of the time. So yeah, so despite the exotic components, I suppose the main thing about this is it looked completely normal. So you could do a lot with it, but I thought I'd fly it as it comes, see what happens.
Now, excuse the fact I'm on my grotty carpet on the handheld camera. I was just wanting to set up this camera to make sure it had WDR on and stuff, and you've got this little wire that's popping out of the frame. This is actually already plugged into the OSD connector on there, so you don't have to take it apart to sort it out, and after you've finished you can just tuck it away again. As it was, WDR was already set on and night mode was set to colour, which I kind of like as well, so another nice little touch there.
Hello, welcome to the field. Gorgeous again, pretty cold. Today we got the Kopis to test out. Never even hovered this, I've just spun the motors up without the props on, so I thought I'd do a quick line of sight hover and then we'll get it up FPV and see how it goes. Well, that's scary. Seems to work fine. Let's try it. So here we go on the Maiden FPV flight, and the first thing I noticed just looking at the DVR footage is the microphone is pretty good on that VTX. You get a reasonable sound recording of the motors, which is always useful if you want to watch back and see if you can hear any particular issues, especially if something's going wrong. So how was this out the bat? Really, really good. Although the one thing I noticed instantly, this is very much everything default camera angle wise. It's almost like the camera's pointing downwards. I mean, it was a slightly raised angle, but you can see, you know, the bottom of the arms, the motor's just about in the middle of the screen there. So I guess it's the benefit of having a really nice wide angle camera. Although this camera's working really nicely, it's no distortions or anything, it just looks really good. The Kopis meanwhile, and obviously this is without HD camera at this point, is just a bit of a little joy to fly. Really simple to move around. And I'm just having a quick test of feeling how these rates are. This is not my normal thing, where they've kind of upped the RC rate and kept the super rate the same. Normally I'd keep the super rate at 1 and I'd mess with my super rates, but this feels okay. It's slightly different in the turns, but fairly snappy and nice. But I think the thing to take away from this first flight is just how good it felt on its Maiden. Just super smooth, super easy to fly. It felt almost more like flying a micro because it was so agile, and I think that's kind of the weight, the power to weight ratio once again. It's very light, but it's got some real serious power behind it. I did notice we're getting a little bit of breakup round the trees, and I'm trying to figure out if this is the angle of that antenna or it's just how it is on this sort of thing. But yeah, I can't complain. I mean, what I need to do is obviously up the camera angle, although, you know, it feels relatively nippy, but at the same time it's, you know, it's practically flat, this camera, or feels that way at least. I do notice in the recorded DVR footage the breakup seems a lot worse than was actually happening. From my point of view, when I was getting what I describe as a little bit of a weaker signal, where it gets a little bit snowier, we seem to get a recorded image of quite a lot of serious breakup, which wasn't actually the case. One of the key things I really couldn't do on a day like this, where the field, despite the lovely sun, the field is absolutely soaking and is full of mud. I just couldn't let this quad touch the grass, else it would be just swamped in water and will have to dry out properly. So I've laid out my tarpaulin, and hint to guys in the UK, pound from the pound shop gets you one of these. You want to push the boat out and spend another £1, you can buy pegs for it to push it down. But yeah, I had to make sure I landed pretty much on my tarpaulin, or in this case directly on the little Kopis case here, like that. Well, that was a good first battery. Stock settings, didn't mess with anything, and very smooth, and thanks for that landing, very good. Thing I really need to change is this camera angle. It actually felt like it was pointing downwards. I saw so much prop, so let's get that up, because that was really easy to land, and we'll have another go. Well, it's a very quick change using those 2 screws to loosen. It actually feels pretty high now, but it's fairly wide angle, so let's see how it goes. Okay, so we're off again with the increased camera angle, and you can still see there's a fair bit of arms and motor on the screen, so it could still go up further, but at the same time it's, you know, it feels fairly nippy, and you can, well, we're not quite getting as much grass on the screen, which is good. There's really 2 ways of setting this up. You can go all out on the angle for max speed, where that would be your racing setup, or just a case of where you're comfy for more sort of freestyle thing. I don't think of myself as either. I'm just someone who sort of muddles around in a field and kind of flies. But I guess I'm more towards the freestyle end of things, although you have to say it's the casual version of the word rather than a serious trying to get some flow together, as many of the guys do. But this felt good. I mean, we're not pulling many amps comparatively, and we're getting a good little speed on. It feels fairly efficient, especially where you're not got any extra weight of the HD camera. This thing knocks along at a nice little pace, and I just can't get through to you how simple this is to fly, because it just reacts brilliantly and very sharply whenever you give it an input. It's just a really nice quad. The lightness of this quad means when you hit full throttle, you burst up into the air really quickly, and you've got a lot of floaty time if you want to hang upside down and stuff. It's just, as soon as you'll start doing manoeuvre in the air, there's no rush. Even though we've upped the camera angle, we've got so much angle on this screen, it's no problem bringing the quad in really slowly and just being able to just dump it down quite easily for a landing. Although it's not as good as the last one. So that was pretty nice, good enough I think to test with the GoPro mount. So we've got this on here, and this is a pretty nice mount, I have to say. This cable ties securely onto the frame. There's these little slots. The session slots and almost locks in there, and then you've got a nice strap around there, so I'm pretty confident that's not going anywhere. Although, you know, I do like a tether on my GoPro ideally, but this looks pretty good. So I've altered the camera angle just a little touch again, so the angle of the FPV camera, I'll move that out of the way, and the GoPro should be just about the same now. Well, let's find out. Let's fly it. I'm looking forward to this. And here we go with some HD footage. And pleased to report that everything is very smooth, even though we've pretty much got a hard mount on the camera. This is the original GoPro Session camera, because that was cheap and I couldn't really justify a Session 5, although everybody seems to use the Super View at 60 frames per second on the Session 5. So this is just plain old 1080p wide, which seems fine to me, but I don't know if there's a big difference in anything else. But yeah, I'm liking the footage, And despite the camera, you know, obviously weighing more than nothing at all, so we're basically sticking a big block on it, it didn't feel like it was being weighted down too much. It did feel different. I could tell that we needed a little bit more power around, but this took about 15 seconds to get used to, and I was absolutely fine with it. And it's lovely to have some good HD footage from this, which is absolutely no hassle at all to set up, as long as you've got a GoPro session, of course. I guess if you're using a regular GoPro or other cameras, it's really just a case of sticking it in somehow and securing it on. But this mount was really good because it had specific little pointy bits that went into holes in the frame, and then that secured onto the frame really nicely, and then the strap really held the GoPro in tightly, so I was quite impressed by that. And for some reason I even decided I might see how good the GoPro session mount is by ramming it into the bush. Basically I came out of here and it was a little bit offline, and then I wasn't looking what I was doing and had a good bounce there. Now there's always a fear when you hit something and carry on is, oh, have I actually left anything behind which I'm now flying away from? Pleased to report though that the GoPro stayed on, absolutely didn't move. As far as any damage went, it was just a couple of tiny deformations in the edge of two of the props. I didn't actually change them. Now, I might have got a little bit shakier on the subsequent flights, but there was nothing too bad to write home about. Now, I was thinking to myself, well, the picture's breaking up just a little bit as I get to the end of the field, so I wonder if I should whack up the strength of my VTX. And then I realised I actually had it set to 25 milliwatts. I thought it was on 200, so I thought, oh, that's easy. I'll just set it up to 200 and see how that goes. But you can see an instant difference here in terms that we've got some lines appearing. It looks like the extra power needed to take that extra milliwatts of power through the VTX actually causes a little bit of noise on the display there. If we compare this a little bit side by side with it running on 25 milliwatts, you'll see there is definitely some noise going on, which is, not desirable. It's not the end of the world. It's not as bad as I've seen noise before, but it's something I'd prefer not to have, obviously. I probably need to mess around and try some other power there to see how it goes, but 25 milliwatts is clear, 200 has a bit of noise there, so it's either going to get much worse or there's going to be some sweet spot somewhere in the other powers that will go better. I managed to get 6 lipos through this for this Maiden, 2 of which I did without a HD camera on, 4 of which I did with a GoPro, and I was loving it. Very, very capable, did just what I wanted it to. Really easy to fly as well. It had absolutely no hassles, getting in there, going fast, doing the sharp turns, but then being able to come in nice and slow for a landing, get to a hover quite easy. It didn't run away with you. There was power there without this mental ability for it to just go on and not stop. And because of that lightweight, it didn't seem to have that really kinetic energy and all that inertia that was difficult to stop. So it was really easy to do really sharp turns and just stop it on a dime. Really liked it.
Well, what can we say about the Kopis 1? I am a fan, and I'm a little bit in love with it because it did everything it was supposed to out of the box. I've never quite seen a quad be quite that set up and ready to fly before as this one, because even the props were on and it was good to go, and the default PIDs worked great. I can't really complain. I will complain, of course, because there's always some nitpicks, but let's talk about what really worked well with this thing. As I said, flies out of the box and it flew really well and really smoothly. Despite the Betaflight setup not being what it could take, I mean, it's got 32-bit ESCs on there, it flew great, and it's like, well, it flies that well already, why would I start messing around and trying to do different things? It's just, it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. The camera was really good. I mean, this is a Runcam Mini with a 2.3mm lens, and we already know that's a great camera. The great thing with this was, we can point it up. I mean, it's at a fair old angle there, and it's still really easy to come in for landing. I can see what's happening. So I could go up a hell of a lot more and go really fast on this thing, but then the GoPro wouldn't be quite in line. So very flexible. I mean, point it up, you can race around with it. Keep it like this, it's more of a freestyle or just, a general flying around thing, which is great. Always good. And that lens didn't seem to distort at all. It was really nice. the VTX. VTX compatible with the Emotion RC Tramp, the way of changing the frequency and the band and the power. That's always really good, because let's face it, it's going to be always tricky to try and get in there and find out what you're doing. More and more have gone with the way of controlling a VTX via your flight controller, and this again is spot on, works great. Now, I thought with this one I was going to say stuff like, well, you know, it's a great quad, but it's not necessarily beginner friendly. But it kind of is, and it kind of isn't. Now, it kind of is because the way it was set up, it would fly really nicely, and with the camera angle straight, you've got no problem pushing it around quite slowly. I would say that the rates were a little bit heavy duty for a beginner. It's like it will roll really quickly. But at the same time, they could have put it in angle and gone around with that no problems. The reason it might not be so beginner friendly is because it's slightly more exotic. The base plate is a single piece of carbon in these double U shape, so you smash one arm up and you replace the whole thing. Also, the ESCs and the flight controller, all a little bit more exotic. So a beginner will tend to crash this a lot more. I say a lot more, we all crash a fair lot trying stuff. But if you smash this up, it's going to be a little bit more expensive to fix, and it is quite an expensive quad to start with. So that's the only reason a sort of beginner flyer might not like this. But in terms of being easy to fly, it's really easy. I mean, that was what I really liked about it. I think its lightness really comes into it, and it felt more like almost flying a micro. You could swing it around really quickly and it will just respond. You've got loads of power there, despite like these motors not being this giant powerhouse compared to some others. And it would just go around exactly where you wanted it to. So yeah, I really like this. Really, really like this a lot. But let's talk about a few negatives, because there's not many. It's a little bit nitpicky, but there are one or two. First off, the GoPro mount. I like this mount. Just explain, the GoPro, the Session, it just slots in there and it kind of locks. So that's not going anywhere. That's great. And it secures in down here with a couple of zip ties. But now it's on here, obviously you don't want to take it off every time. If you put it back in the lovely bag no longer closes because the GoPro mount's in the way. I want both things. I want the nice GoPro mount on, and I want to be able to put it in the bag. So that, that's a nitpick. And maybe I've put it on wrong. What I've got two cable ties here to hold it in, which seem to be the way, because there's little nugs on here which connect into the frame really nicely. But yeah, I can't take that on and off every time. I keep thinking that perhaps I did something wrong, because the other thing that was in the bag is this spongy thing with double-sided tape. I figured that was for another type of camera to put on there, but I don't know. If I've done it wrong, if you've got one, let me know. So I'd love to be able to get it in and out of the bag every time. That'd be great. So the other nitpick thing, I'd say, was the angle of the skew here. It's not perfect. I mean, it was okay, and I was going 300 meters on 25 milliwatts before it started getting a bit snowy. But I should be able to get further on 25 milliwatts. So this doesn't do itself any favours. It'd be better to have more flexible angle. At the same time, of course, you're protecting it. But I did notice the difference between having this here and hitting that null point occasionally. Again, it's a nitpick. It's not a huge deal, but it could be better. One thing that is a little bit more annoying is the noise, and I found this out because I was getting some snow on this and I thought, oh, I'll bump up the power from 200. Finding I was only on 25. 25, lovely clear FPV display, as you can see in the DVR. As soon as I popped up to 200, I got some noise going on there, which, we could do without. It wasn't bad noise, it wasn't a showstopper, but I would like to have no noise at 200. I'll mess around and do some different tests on different powers to see what the difference is, but yeah, it'd be better without it, wouldn't it? Overall, a really excellent package. Obviously at $300, as it is at the moment, it's more expensive than your average quad. It is really good though, and ready to go out of the box, so, depends where you are on it. For me, I really enjoyed flying this. It is an excellent fly, and I will be doing a lot more on this. The quality at the moment of your bind and fly quads has just gone through the roof, and this is, for me, an exceptional fly. So yeah, loved it. Thanks so much to Banggood for sending me one. And of course, if you want to check it out, the link is down below. For now, I'm going to hopefully be charging some more batteries and doing some more flying with this. I will see you later. Bye.